Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
It's the 5th of May. I kind of wish it were the 4th of May because that's Star Wars Day. And it's Star Wars Day because you say to each other, May the 4th be with you.
Sounds like you have a speech impediment.
And that's our message today, too. May the 4th be with you. Actually, we have another title, and we're calling it Developing the Inner Landscape. Developing the Inner Landscape. And so today is May 5th, 2024. And we're so glad to have you all with us. So, by the inner landscape, we're talking about uh, what happens when we are not engaged and speaking with someone else, listening to music, uh, just not outer engaged at all, but inner engaged. And, unless we are given opportunities as children, for example, teaching children how to meditate, whatnot, we learn as human beings that we need to be doing something all the time. We need to be either talking or playing and engaging with other people, or if we learn to read, we're reading, we're watching television. But children, particularly when they're doing nothing, end up with that, Mom, I'm bored. It's
Are
like,
we there yet?
entertain me, entertain me. And by developing the inner landscape, what we're talking about is learning of the richness that is there when we learn to go within. And about the only place you learn to go within are spiritual teachings, because that's where all the richness is. That's where the rich experience is and the depth is. Did you want to speak to that?
I don't say a word if you can listen to you. Yeah. Well, I think that's entirely accurate. What I've observed is that we depend primarily on the senses, our outer senses, our touch, feel, smell, taste, see, hear. We depend on those senses at a very early age. And the more we depend on those, the more we have an outer reality that actually, without us knowing it, dictates our inner experience. When in fact, if we were to be able to be in our spiritual body, we would be able to see from the inside out rather than from the outside in. And this inside out is a fearless place. It's a place of permanence. It's a place of eternality. It's a place where great wisdom, great knowledge, and all of the teachers that have ever lived can actually come true. And we tend to not trust it. We tend to be told that it's just hooey. It's
Your imagination,
yeah,
you're making it
and
up.
why don't you just be realistic? And usually when somebody says be realistic, what they're saying is, would you please evaluate the experience you're having on the basis of your senses, and then compare that to your knowledge base based on your senses memory. And so what we end up not doing is connecting with that inner part of us that often is, you could call it your guidance system, you could call it your inner wisdom, your inner teacher. We are told fairly early on, ignore that stuff. That just doesn't make any sense until we have our first love relationship or whatever, and our heart is open. And unfortunately, we don't listen to some of the messages that it gives us, like this is a wrong choice. Stay away from that person. We use our senses and our look. That person looks really good, really hot, really, really like the one. Our heart says, not necessarily, but we do it anyway. And then later we come back to, I had that gut feeling, which I don't listen to because I don't believe in it, because it's all just garbage. And so this really, our talk today is about learning to look inward, or to spend time inside and then looking out through the world, to the world. Yesterday we were looking out the window, and a beautiful broadband hawk came flying by the window, and he found his meal on the ground, which is usually where most of his meals are, and grabbed his meal. And I sat for the probably 20 minutes just loving seeing him, watching him, being with him. And I realized that I was bringing my inner experience, my inner love of nature out. I was seeing him through the eyes of love, through the eyes of compassion, through the eyes of excitement, that inner excitement that happens when you first see a beautiful thing. And you're not told how to name it, you're just told to take it in. And so I took the experience in, but I was having this conversation in my head with him. or her, and we talked quite a while. And other people would say that's crazy, but I would say, we spend too much of our time naming things rather than being in relationship with those things. So if you can, and I say if you can, because we tend to be stirred into fear very quickly. And so without meaning to, many of our decisions are fear-based decisions. What we're trying to do is not have a good life. We're trying to avoid having a bad one. And that's a huge difference. So when I ask somebody, how are you doing today? So far, so good. They're really telling me that they're living on the edge of fear. And so far, their fears haven't come true. So when we cannot live a fear-based life, which is I'm eternal, I'm going to be around forever in one form or another, I can take this experience in and enjoy it rather than, I hope this doesn't get me. And we have so many statements that we make and so many things that we hear that infer that life is dangerous, short, probably not worth doing. If it is worth doing, only after you do a lot of work. You have to count on being realistic. And all of that stuff turns us away from our spiritual nature.
Right. So what we think before we learn that we have a soul that's always with us. I mean, we tend to, if you've been to Sunday school, you believe you have a soul, but it's inaccessible, that may be a part of you, but you don't know how to access it. And so the only thing you have is your brain. You have your brain to make decisions with. And what we're saying here is that when you know how to go within, you can access a lot of wisdom that comes from your own soul, or perhaps other guidance, but you cannot access that if you think your only guidance is your brain. You know. And many of us think that we have brilliant brains that guide us very well, but when you make enough, when you have enough um, outcomes that let you know, sometimes your most brilliant decisions do not come out the way you would like, and then you hopefully learn to go within. The way I learned was through meditation. When I was young and going to Sunday school and whatnot, I was taught prayer, but I was not ever taught to go within and listen. That comes from our Eastern religions, and thank goodness meditation came across the oceans from India to here with wonderful gurus who started teaching meditation, and Americans were very taken with it. It was a real step up. I remember I found the first Science of Mind Center that I went to from a friend who meditated, and I also wanted to learn to meditate, but she had gone to some place and paid $2,000 to learn to meditate. I didn't want to do that. I wanted the goodies without paying the $2,000. So when I found that at the Science of Mind Center in Fort Lauderdale, they didn't teach meditation. They told you to meditate. And that was interesting but it turned out to be good advice to me. The minister said, just when you first get up in the morning, go find your meditation place, go sit there. He said, don't get up and have a cup of coffee and a cigarette before you do it. Go right there. And interestingly, I would have done both of those things first at the time. So instead, I would just get up and go to my meditation pillow. And, at first, just a couple of minutes seemed like forever, because that's we're not accustomed to going within. We're not accustomed to finding the richness of the landscape there. And we call this developing the landscape because the more time you spend there, the richer it gets. With at first I would get really good ideas for my business. I thought, oh, that's nice. Well, we call that creativity. Well, it all comes from within, ideas, um, guidance, and each one of those is a new adventure that's very exciting and very rich. Um, Carl Jung, oops, that was very noisy, wasn't it? Carl Jung had this to say. He said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes."
So let's pick up on that. When you see something in nature, you see a dog or you see a cat or you see a bird or you see an alligator, whatever you see in the park. We have a lot of different things to see. when you start to look at it, if you can, ask yourself, is my heart open to it? Is my heart open to seeing and being with this, or have I simply named it, assessed it, and am I moving on? You can do the admit. We're having people join us late. They're having trouble getting on. So, but the question is, can I join with the thing that I'm seeing? The tendency is to name it, blame it, name it, leave it, name it, see it, say it, I saw it,
And nature,
and
yeah.
nature, and but also in a lot of other, oh, I know that person, or I know that thing, rather than having that, what Jesus is reported to have said, approaching the world as children. And I think the most powerful part of seeing the world as a child and seeing it through a child's eyes is they don't see it with the already knowing experience that actually keeps them from getting to know the thing itself. We need to be a little dumber, a little more curious. And if we can be curious and not have a conclusion to what it is that we're thinking, we can join it and be with it. You know, if you've ever watched a movie where you know the ending, there's something that's lost knowing the ending. And so our tendency to feel safe is to try to know the ending. And we try to know the ending of nearly everything unconsciously because, you know, we were wired to stay safe. And so without knowing it, we jump to a conclusion and then we leave the thing. And so allow it to be a movie that is unfolding, even if you've seen it before. Allow yourself to not know the ending.
Right. So, our ego self, which we must have to be a human being, it's what we think is the boss of us. It, it wants to keep us safe and be right, and that can be helpful. That can be helpful if we don't think that that's all that we are, because we also need to admit when we're wrong and admit, uh, apologize to others, all those things the ego might not like to do. But so we tend to think that's all of us. I called it earlier our brain, but I'm really talking about our ego, and we must have an ego. I'm not saying that they're bad or our egos are bad. It's just part of us and part of our physical self. And what you find when you go inside is more in touch with your soul. And that soul is eternal. See, as an ego self with a physical self, there's a part of it that's always afraid of dying. And Bob had a close call this week with more fear of dying than usual. But it's a good awakening to know that that inner part of you, that soul, never dies. It's eternal and it's perfect right here, right now. So you don't have to uh, be always trying to improve it like we try to improve ourselves. We always try to get more educated, more skillful in this area or that. And that's a good thing. But your soul is already whole and complete and perfect and eternal. And so when you go inside, and spend time with that, it just feels good. The fear dissipates and disappears, and just that knowing that all is well shows up. As a matter of fact, that was some of the first guidance I got. What are those words? All is well.
I'm going to share a personal experience. When I went to the hospital,
Please.
the surgeon said, your heart's not happy. And those were his words, not happy. And the way
That was this week, by the way.
right, yeah, Tuesday night. And what the doctor was saying is, we looked at the enzymes and one of them is critical and it looks like you need to be here and we need to do some work to try to get that heart to be happy again. Some way I was in AFib, which is not a good thing. And that lasted for like 6 hours, which makes you think about what it's going to be like on the other side, should you be fortunate enough to get to see it. And but why I'm sharing this with you is that when I got finished with all of this and got a stent and feel better and in the process of recovery, I thought about my heart not being happy. And I'm throwing this out to you that might have some of the same experiences I've had, but maybe not. And what I did is I had a conversation with my heart. And I said, I'm really sorry that I have burdened you with shame, with guilt, with anger, with worry, and with fear. And I release you from that. And I don't want for you to feel you have to hold on to that or that that's the real truth of my being. And as I was doing that process, I realized how much from a very early age I had been putting those kinds of experiences on my heart and into my body. And so I think some of us have heart failures or have heart attacks or have an unhappy heart because our heart is burdened with the lack of forgiveness. So I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself for burdening the parts of my body that have been suffering from those heavy burdens. And I don't know to what extent it all will end up being visible or real in this physical world, but I know that for me, having that experience really felt like I had brought something to closure that needed to happen. And I share it's a very personal experience, but I share it because my most personal experiences when I share them turn out to be other people's experiences too. So I suspect I'm not alone, and if I am alone, then I'm telling you something you've never heard before.
Yeah, well, that's the part of about being human that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, we're born in a situation where we know we're here for a limited time. We know everybody dies. That's, that's quite a situation to be in where, you just try not to think about it, but know you're going to die one day. And that can be very scary. So, in developing this inner landscape is when we lose that fear, or as much of that fear as we can, to know that, and Bob knows full well from all the near death experiences he studied that life does go on. And, but still, our ego wants to stay here and be safe and go on forever.
I watched a program on PBS, and the narrator was taking different jobs, having different experiences. And one of the jobs he took was in India, I think it was, or in Asia someplace. And what they were doing was taking people on a trip and jumping off of a huge rock and into the water,
30 foot,
30
30
foot.
foot rock.
He led the people to the rock. That was his job. He watched them jump. He saw that they didn't die. He watched them have their experience, and it was his turn to jump. Fear hadn't left him, even though the reality of other people's success was in front of him. Fear can be a really difficult thing to defeat. And sometimes it's simply something we have to say, I understand you're there, and I understand you're afraid, and I release you and let you go. And now I can do what I need or want to do. So he did finally jump. He took his past experience, but he took his heart with him. So for those of you today that feel burdened by some past event or experience that you've had that you blame yourself for, or you feel bad about, or that you feel bad about your own body because it hasn't been doing everything that you'd like for it to do, that it doesn't seem to be performing the way you'd like it to perform. I would say, first off, spiritually cut it some slack. Say, I forgive you and I forgive myself for burdening you with these high expectations and a lack of an appreciation of what you do for me. Say thank you. Say thank you to the body of your experience. Say thank you for everything going on around you that's teaching you what you need to know for you to have the most amazing life experience that you can have. And see how you feel having done that. See if that allows you to make a deeper or richer connection with this world that is in you and outside of you as well.
And what I was doing all during that time was affirmative prayer. I was seeing in my mind's eye and knowing that he is well. He would be well. I did guess that he might need a stent, but I saw him in my mind's eye coming out well with that. And so that's one of the things that we can do that helps the situation. So it doesn't help the situation for me to be blubbering and be afraid and scared that I might lose my husband and poor me and poor him. All of that is not helpful. But so in developing your inner landscape, you learn discipline of with your thoughts to see and say the positive outcome and expect it. That has helped me through so many would-be traumas and tragedies. You just stay with the positive. It also helps me not be another person at the hospital that they need to help. You
Mhm.
I'm holding the high watch. I'm seeing things with a good outcome. And I just wanted to say that I'm going to be teaching a class with Dr. Pamela Gray, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but let's see, the 4th and 7th would be the 11th, wouldn't it? So we're teaching that class, and it's based on her book, Power Your Decisions. And so I just want to remind you that that's coming up if anybody is interested. Um, and so it's all about how to deal with these issues, with health issues, how to be as healthy as we possibly can, how to create health where there's sometimes illness. And it's very empowering.
I think people often don't connect discipline with creativity. And they think discipline is work, discipline is keeping your mind or to the grindstone, so to speak. And actually discipline is the skill that you develop, the mastery that you develop to keep the things that you don't want to have in front of you to the side of you, to move to the foreground, what it is you want to give your attention to. And the more we're able to do that, the more creativity becomes available, the more options we see, the more we can do things that hadn't occurred to us. What I noticed for myself, and this may not be true for you, is I do an awful lot of my life on automatic. And actually what happens is I could say I'm not necessarily present for it. I'll show up when it's a good time. And I think we often don't show up for life. And then when the time is right for it, we have to wake up. And being awake is really showing up for life as much as you can so that you have mastery over showing up. And the more your whole experience is showing up in life, the richer your experience of life is. I was talking to somebody recently who watches movies, and I said, "So tell me about your enjoyment of movies." He says, "Well, I watch the movie, and if it's a good story, I like it." I said, "Well, what about the music?" "I don't pay attention to the music." "What about the editing?" I didn't know what that is." "What about, and the choreography, the dress, just the story?" So what was amazing to me was how much joy he found watching a movie for the script, but also how much joy I experience in seeing all of those different features and how they all tie together. So what you can do with the discipline that you allow yourself to see more and more and more is you have a bigger and bigger world. And what I notice about people is when they're afraid, they make their world small. When they feel safe, they can make their world, they can allow their world to get bigger. And so ask yourself, is my world as big as I'd like it to be? And how could I expand this world that I live in so that it's a richer, fuller, more dynamic experience?
They can do that by developing their inner landscape.
Exactly.
Exactly. And so now I would like to invite you to support this ministry. And we were so busy making sure we had a good Zoom connection that
We
we
didn't even bring it up, but
didn't do this
I would like to mention that too.
share screens.
A lot of people right now, I think, are struggling, as happens in life with all kinds of finances. But we've noticed that the finances for our center have dwindled to a very, very low number. And I don't think it's because people don't care. They may have other expenditures, or people may not realize that actually this is not a free service for us. We have expenses too. So if you haven't donated, or you feel that donating is something you forgot to do, and you can donate, please do that, because it really does help this ministry to continue and expand.
And you do that by going to our website, which is CSL, that stands for Center for Spiritual Living, palmbeaches.org. And there's a button at the top that says ways to donate. And also there's a place on the website that says classes, and that's where this class of Power Your Decisions, focusing on health, is shown how you can sign up for that.
For a minute, I thought I was working for PBS. Donate your car. No, don't donate we don't want your car. There's no place to put it here.
Okay, so
I think we're gonna end our recording.
and to end.
I think we go up to the top to meetings and stop recording.